You said you wanted to get the boat on the water this summer.
Diary of a Wimpy Kid is to me what Harry Potter was to many others. But instead of escaping to a fantastic world of magic, the Wimpy Kid book centered around the relatable trials and tribulations of middle child Greg Heffley and his misadventures through middle school. The books were eventually turned into films, which I remember loving when I was younger. I recently rewatched the third film, Dog Days, and found it enjoyable. It was a good adaptation that combined elements both original and from the book, and put them together in a pretty coherent narrative. There were some pretty funny jokes here and there, and supporting characters like Frank, Rowley, and Roderick really stole the show. But Dog Days came out in 2012, and was considered to be the final film for a while. But now we have The Long Haul, a new film based off the 9th book of the same name with a whole new cast. Much of the same crew from the previous films has returned, but despite that, this film has garnered a lot of criticism from both critics and fans. Being curious, I decided to see the film on opening weekend, and to my surprise, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. At its core, The Long Haul is very similar to the previous films. The cinematography, soundtrack, writing, and editing is nearly identical to the original trilogies. Even the cool animations that bring the illustrations of the book to life are back, and they now have a really cool paper diorama look to them. But what makes this film feel so odd is the new cast, which, with one exception, is a major downgrade. The exception is Jason Drucker as Greg, who may be just a bit better of an actor than the original Greg, Zachary Gordon. In Dog Days at least, Gordon always looked like he was half asleep and had two expressions throughout the entire movie, annoyed and shocked. While Drucker looks a little bit young to be a middle schooler, he still does a fairly good job, and I found his performance one of the better ones in the film. The rest of the Heffley family doesn't fare as well. Tom Everett Scott is boring and forgettable as the father Frank, and is a huge downgrade from Steve Zahn's goofy performance from the original films. Alessia Silverstone does a fine job as Susan, but like Rachel Harris before her, she doesn't have much to do besides yell at the rest of her family and be a typical mom. Charlie Wright is fine as Roderick, but he is honestly the biggest disappointment in the entire film. Devin Bostick's Roderick was the best part of the original movies. He gave a cool and sneaky performance that caused him to steal almost every scene he was in. Wright's performance pales in comparison to Bostick's, but I don't think that it deserved the huge backlash that it got on social media. Rowley also appears in this film, but he appears so little that he fails to make much of an impression. He's the only side character from the books that appears in The Long Haul, and he didn't even need to be there. By making this movie a Heffley-only road trip, the film lost a lot of potentially fun scenes with some of the great side characters from the Wimpy Kid series. The positive of this premise is that it does cause the film to have a lot of different locations, and that keeps the story fresh and interesting. There's another big negative to The Long Haul, and it's one that could have been easily avoided. Up till this point, all of the Wimpy Kid books and movies have been fairly timeless. The series seems like it could take place at any time and at any place. But The Long Haul changes that. Here, Greg changes the destination of his family road trip, so that he can go to a video game convention and meet his hero, a YouTube Let's Player that dyes his hair and over-exaggerates everything he says. This subplot wasn't present in the original book, and this combined with the other subplot where Greg becomes a meme are pandering to the lowest denominator.
Heffley, you are grounded!
I didn't need to see all these pointless modern elements inserted into an already fine story, like Greg and Roderick using Uber. You already have relatable characters and situations that kids already love. You don't need to shoehorn the most generic modern slang and culture into this film. Contrary to what you may think, The Long Haul does actually have a few positives in it. There were a few jokes that made me laugh, although most of those were lifted directly from the book. Probably the moment where I laughed the most was during the most subtle joke in the movie. Towards the end, Roderick says to Greg, "Mom doesn't know what it's like for a kid to live in the 20th century. I'll let you find the humor in that line." Most of the film relies heavily on potty humor that got very annoying after a while. There's a scene where Greg literally pees in a bottle for 2 straight minutes while Roderick is sleeping. He pees in a bottle of lemonade, and I was just waiting for Roderick to wake up and think that the family had gotten more lemonade and drink Greg's pee. It would have been very gross, but this is honestly the kind of humor that this film got me to expect. I read the Long Haul book in preparation of seeing this movie. The movie ended up improving upon the story of the book in a few aspects. It gave the Heffleys a much needed break at points, instead of just giving them another disaster to deal with. which fixes the biggest problem I had with the book. It also gave the Heffleys a destination for their road trip, and a conclusion with their ongoing feud with an annoying bearded family. The father of what Greg calls the Beardo family was the best part of the film. His appearance is accompanied by a James Bond music riff of all things, and his determination to get revenge against Greg is super entertaining. Overall, The Long Haul is true to its name. It's pretty similar to the other Wimpy Kid films at its center, but it really suffers where it differs from the other films. The cast is just a disappointing downgrade, with the exception of our protagonist, and the film just feels like a pointless cash grab, although it's clear that some sort of effort was put into it. I don't think that it really deserves all of the hate that it is getting, but it doesn't deserve your money either. I give Diary of a Wimpy Kid: The Long Haul a 5 out of 10. Stay away from this movie, stick to the original trilogy, and hope that if this series is to be adapted again, it's in a better format, like in an animated series or film. That's not what I meant! I know that many of you expected part 2 of my Wishology review to come out this week, but I'm still working on editing it, and you'll have to wait at least one more week before you see it. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this random review, and you can also check out my other videos on cartoons, follow me on Twitter, and check out my Discord server. Until then, I'm Nintendo, and this is Not My Roderick.
Exploded diaper all over the place.